And we're going.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this week's episode of the Almost Awesome podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Sam Nicholson, and I'm joined alongside by Taryn Owens
Yellow.
and Andy Carr.
Hi, how are you doing?
Not bad. So basically, this is just a weekly podcast that has people gather around from all corners of the globe to discuss your favourite topics like games, movies, and comics, all the way to food and life and all those sorts of good things. We're primarily on YouTube right now, but you'll be able to find us elsewhere quite soon. So let's get started. Have you guys been playing anything recently?
I've been on Witcher at the moment. That's what I've been spending a lot of my sort of gaming time doing. I know that I think Sam, you were saying it wasn't sort of grabbing you so much. I think when we chatted off air, but I don't know. It's really grabbed me, and I didn't expect it to, in the way that it has. Have you played it, Taron?
No, I haven't got my hands on it yet. As I said in one of the other episodes, I plan to grab it once I get my computer upgraded. But so it looks good. It looks really good. But,
I mean,
it's a very polished game. I mean, I really like what it is for it is, and normally that's definitely the kind of game I really love playing. But for whatever reason, just my gaming mood at the moment, it's just not there. I'm probably only maybe 2 hours into it, to be honest, and I've had it since launch day.
Yeah.
What have you been playing recently, Taryn?
Well, I've recently gone back, the back catalogues that everyone has, and started playing South Park: The Stick of Truth.
Oh,
fantastic!
And I'm really questioning as to why I have not played that game before.
It's so good. It's so South Park.
It's so terrible. It's amazing.
How far are you into it?
I've just passed the part where I fight the underpant gnomes.
Yeah, you don't forget that scene very quickly afterwards.
No, it's left rather terrible pictures in my head.
That's just very typical South Park, isn't it? I don't know. I just love how much it feels like an episode of the show, and they could have really half-assed it and just put a couple of jokes or something like that in it, and not really make it feel like it's in the South Park sort of universe, like you're watching an episode of the show. But it's just so authentic. I was really blown away by it when I played it. I didn't like the combat system at all. That's not really something I'm into. But just the story and characters and dialogue and, really the writing got me through it. I loved that game. I loved it an immense amount. And I'm really looking forward to the new one, A Fractured Butthole, or whatever it's called, The Fractured Butthole.
That trailer, my God.
It looks amazing.
He's like, okay, we're not doing fantasy now, we're playing superheroes now. Just like, okay, we'll do that then. Okay. Just out of interest, did you guys have a lot cut out of Stick of Truth over in Australia? Because there were key scenes that were cut out in the European version. I suspect you guys might have had that as well.
Exactly the same scenes cut out, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we got the exact same version. Yep.
It always made me laugh because then they describe everything that you're missing in perfect detail underneath it anyway. So
yeah, with a crying koala. So.
Oh, did you?
It's fine. We have a picture of the quiet crying koala whilst they describe it.
I suppose it makes sense if you guys didn't get that actually.
Yeah. No, that's true. Now that you say that, yeah. Yeah.
But what have you been playing, Sam?
Yeah, so lately I've been playing my 360 more than anything, actually, instead of my PS4. So lately I've been replaying Mass Effect 2. I decided to go back to that because I really enjoy that game, and I think I mentioned something about it the other day, so I just, had to get straight onto that. I don't know, just put me in the mood for it. And I've also been playing a little bit of Shadows of Mordor. That is on PS4, but only sort of touching it. And I was playing Batman Arkham Origins in the lead into Arkham Knight because I'd never actually finished Arkham Origins.
Oh, okay.
So I finished that actually yesterday, and then about 20 minutes ago I got home from the midnight release of Arkham Knight. So I've just picked that up. It's currently doing a day one update now because don't we all love those?
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, I'm really excited to play it. I'm going to jump straight on it after this, I think. Really excited. But that really does bring me into our first topic. Batman. So I was really wondering, I'm a huge Batman fan myself with the comics, and I was wondering whether you guys like the comics or not. What is your sort of favorite incarnation of Batman?
Daron, do you have a straightforward answer? Or
honestly, I'm actually not really into the Batmans. I haven't watched any of the movies. I haven't played any of the games. I haven't read any of the comics. I'm probably as, out of Batman as you can possibly get.
Okay. Are you curious about the new game? Is that on your radar, or is it just like, okay, you enjoy that if you want, but...
If I can, I've had a sort of little look at it. If I can, get around to playing the first two games and, I mean, the end of the second one's been spoiled for everyone. You know exactly what happens. But I'm sure you can jump straight in, but I'll have a look at it and see how it goes. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of like you, Sam. I'm a huge Batman fan, although I probably only started to realize it with Dark Knight. I think, I loved... I loved the Tim Burton first Batman when I was growing up. My brother and I had watched that all the time. So in terms of nostalgia, that's probably the one for me, even though I know it's not a great interpretation of it. It's still, for me, that's kind of like my childhood one. But I mean, I really think that the Arkham games have kind of got down the representation of those characters, most of them anyway, to kind of the definitive version, for me at least anyway. They seem to have really tapped into the comics universe and brought them into another medium pretty successfully. There's probably only a couple of characters where I'd think that's not quite the case, but I think by getting Paul Dini to write Asylum and then City, they started off on a really strong note. And so, yeah, even though I've got strong nostalgia for those early 90s movies, I think these Arkham games are really right up there, I think, in terms of my favorite incarnations of the character and the universe around it as well. What do you reckon, Sam?
Yeah, I'm actually 100% with you, I think. I started to get into Batman a little bit before The Dark Knight. I used to love the Batman animated series, basically.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the old cartoon, I really liked that. The sort of Mark Hamill sort of era one, when he was Joker. Yeah, that's what I really got into. I used to watch all the DVDs and whatnot. And then The Dark Knight came out, and that just sort of blew me away as of what, I would have been 12, 13.
Yeah.
Heath Ledger's Joker, it freaked me out, but at the same time, it really intrigued me. So that sort of thrust me into starting to read comics, that movie. Yeah. So I started to read a whole lot of Batman comics and everything, and then that's when I played Arkham Asylum. It would have been a year or two later, and I thought, wow, this is really honest to the comics, really true. They've really brought that medium into video games. It's very accurate. It very much feels like you're actually reading one of the books that you're playing it, and that's what I loved about it. And my favorite part about it is actually just Mark Hamill. I love his Joker.
Oh, yes.
It's the reason it's probably my favorite medium for Batman, the Arkham games. Instead of comics or the movies, Mark Hamill really, his performances as the Joker in the games are a little bit darker than his past performances, but very much more Joker to me. I don't know, I sort of just fell in love with it. It really blew me away. So playing those games is definitely my favorite way to experience Batman. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the Nolan films. Not the third one so much, actually, but I did really like the Nolan films still. But I don't know, those games just... there's something special about them, something very DC Comics about them.
Yeah.
Because they're made by comic fans, so they're very authentic. But from an outside point of view, Taryn, what would sort of gauge your interest into Batman? Like, what sort of looks most interesting to you?
I don't know. Well, I tried to jump into the first one. I think it was Arkham Asylum, first game, and it just wasn't. It just didn't. It was too closed. It felt claustrophobic, sort of, where you couldn't do anything. It was just a straight line, follow it straight up. But the new games look really, really, really good. I also plan to go back and watch some of the really old movies, some of the older movies, and the newer ones, of course, the Heath Ledger and the Dark Knight, all that sort of stuff. But yeah.
No, I think that makes sense. And for me, it was kind of strange, when you said like watching the animated series. I mean, I totally did that as well. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know whether you guys feel this way, not just about like Batman, but just kind of like, if I just brought it into sort of geeky culture in some way. I sort of felt there was a period when I was sort of 13, 14, and I think I'm about 8, 9, 10 years older than you both, I think. But there was a period where I just kind of went, I don't know whether I should enjoy this stuff. Like maybe I should kind of grow up a bit, or something like that. And so even though I knew I loved all the superhero stuff, I mean, nowadays you're just saturated with it, and it's kind of like everyone loves this stuff, or it's a part of mass culture at least anyway. But I remember watching like Dark Knight and then the Arkham Asylum game, and just like, actually maybe it's kind of okay to like this stuff. This is done really mature, and it's done with intelligence, and it's done with care, and all that sort of stuff. And I think that's why particularly the Arkham Asylum game really sort of struck with me, because like, this is done really well, and this has really grabbed an adult audience to this stuff. I mean, again, do you guys ever have that, or do you just kind of like, you're cool with this stuff like for a while? And I mean, I don't know.
I mean, Arkham Asylum came out when I was 13 or 14. So I was still very much into superheroes and stuff when that came out anyway, so I didn't really notice the whole sort of, straying off superheroes thinking I should grow up sort of thing. But I can see what it did for video games, at least for superheroes. There were no good superhero games before it. It really sort of came out of nowhere. Rocksteady somehow just made a great superhero game, and it sort of shocked everyone. But speaking of coming out of nowhere, Brad Murphy has just joined us.
Hello.
Hi.
Can anybody hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, you sound just fine.
Yep. How's everybody doing?
Yeah, good.
Not too bad.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us, man.
Good to hear.
What are your thoughts on the whole Batman situation?
I've not been as heavily anticipating Arkham Knight as everybody else has, because I personally wasn't really a huge fan of Arkham City. I played through most of Arkham Asylum. I mean, that was back when that came out, when I had a lot of time to play games but not much money to buy games. Because I was like, 2009, I would have been like 11 or 12 years old, something like that. So I didn't play all the way through Arkham Asylum. I just played it at a friend's house, and Arkham City, it just didn't really click with me. Maybe I was expecting more of an open world, and it sounds like that's what we're getting in Arkham City. But yeah, I don't know. I think what I have to say is a bit more relevant just to the Batman conversation in general, and specifically what you said a minute ago, Andy, about having that moment where you kind of were like, oh, should I grow up and stop enjoying these things? I remember very specifically having a DS in elementary school, and having like Pokemon and some other stuff on it, and then selling it because that wasn't cool anymore.
Yeah.
And then like very shortly afterwards, like a few years later, kind of becoming a little bit more comfortable with myself and being like, okay, I'm totally gonna buy this shit because Pokemon is awesome.
Yep. I know the feeling. I pretty much did exactly the same thing. And then you realize the cost of exactly the stuff you sold is 3 times more now.
Yeah. N64 regrets over here as well. Same situation.
Speaking of N64, that had one of the best superhero games on it of all time, didn't it? With Superman 64.
Oh yeah, an absolute classic, that one. Game changer.
Yes.
The Arkham Asylum of that generation, without a doubt.
Of course.
But I'd like to know, so who's everyone's favourite Batman? Whether it's...
You mean in terms of just media in general, or specifically like in movies?
In any medium, like who has done your favourite Batman, or your favourite at least version of the character. If it's in a comic, it might be a certain writer who's written him a certain way.
Well, I don't have a ton of experience reading Batman comics, but just hearing that, the names that come to my mind are Frank Miller and Christian Bale. Because I read The Dark Knight Returns. It's like, well, that was really, 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 really good. Like, I'm not a big comic guy, and that's like kind of blowing my mind right now. I'm like in the middle of that. I think it's really cool. But obviously, I love the Christopher Nolan Batman movies. So yeah, Christian Bale, even with that dumb voice.
I'm a fan of the dumb voice.
So I can't remember whether it was it How It Should Have Ended, which described it as like gargling nails or something like that. His voice that he does in Batman. I don't know, something like that. I swear I heard that somewhere.
It's not very far off.
No, particularly by Dark Knight Rises. Seems to get more gargly towards the third movie.
Yeah, he does indeed. But who's your favorite Batman, Andy?
Probably the Kevin Conroy one from the animated series and from the games. It just I don't know. There's just something in his voice where you just finished Origins, and I can't remember the guy's name. The guy did Ezio in Assassin's Creed. Was that guy doing the voice? And there was just something so monotone about it, and he just sounded bored more than anything. And yet Kevin Conroy just, I don't know, somehow still doing a fairly deep monotone voice is able to express so much. And so I really like that. In terms of the comics, there's one of the artists that drew him is a guy called, I think it's Tim Sale for The Long Halloween. And he draws Batman as this kind of like wispy, kind of ethereal, dark spirit kind of character. His cape just curls around corners and just sort of goes around villains and stuff like that. It just makes him look more like this demonic, scary presence, which I just thought is quite an interesting interpretation, which the movie don't seem to have tapped in as much. So just for a slightly obscure one, I quite like that.
Yeah, I don't know. For me, it'd be The Dark Knight Returns as Batman. I will admit, though, I've never actually read the novel. I've only seen the movies. I saw them first before I ever had a chance to read the novel, so I haven't really bothered reading the novel because I saw the movies. But I don't know, I really loved that Batman, the dark, gritty, old Batman, coming back to protect Gotham. It was great, especially in The Dark Knight Returns Part 2 in the movie. Oh, it's my favorite Batman movie. I don't know if you guys have seen it.
Really?
But it is
you like that more than The Dark Knight?
I do. Have you seen it?
Wow. No, I had seen.
Heavily recommend.
I saw. Now that was one of the Michael Keaton Batmans. Yes.
No. This is an animated one.
Oh. Okay. All right, that makes me feel a little bit better because I saw the first Michael Keaton Batman and I was like, that's an all right movie. And then I thought you were saying that something involving that and those people at all was better than The Dark Knight. I was like, what?
No, definitely not. No, The Dark Knight is without a doubt the best live-action Batman movie, for sure. But no, you're reading The Dark Knight Returns, so I probably won't go into it anymore if you haven't finished it yet. But The Dark Knight Returns Part 2, like the movie, it's obviously following the book. It's the second part of that. It's fantastic, without a doubt the best Batman movie. But yeah, that's sort of my favorite incarnation of Batman. But the thing with me, the reason I think I like Batman so much isn't because of him himself. It's more so the villains. I sort of like how that stacks up more compared to if you were to, say, watch one of the Marvel movies. There's not as much depth to them. It's a bit, I don't know how you'd put it, sort of, I don't want to say childish, because I like Marvel probably more than DC, but I don't know. Do you guys sort of get what I'm saying?
The Marvel heroes, I think its characters tend to actually be better characters more often than DC heroes. DC heroes seem kind of just like these, to a certain degree. I mean, Superman is kind of the epitome of this, just these infallible kind of guys whose only real struggles are presented in the world around them, as opposed to the Marvel heroes having like real internal problems. You know what I mean? And I don't read enough comics to say that and be like, and like really argue that point. But that is just my impression from any DC property I've ever consumed. I mean, you occasionally run into some like I mean, when you're reading The Dark Knight Returns, you run into some issues where Batman is struggling over whether or not it's okay to kill somebody or something like that. But I don't know. But I do agree that the villains are what make Batman. I don't know if anybody read what is it called? Death of the Family. It's in the most recent New 52 run. That was just like this harrowing onslaught of being afraid of the Joker.
That's probably the most terrifying version of the Joker I think I've ever seen. You take someone who, physically isn't much of a threat, but mentally can royally mess you up. And the moment where there's a scene where he's in the police department and the lights keep coming on and off. He clicks the lights on and off, and every time the light goes off, he snaps another detective's neck. And it's just all done in the dark. It's just, it's terrifying. And you're reading this and going, this is a comic book in front of me, and this is genuinely terrifying.
Yeah, I mean, I think the biggest, the most emblematic page from that entire run is when Batman is approaching this big building. I forget what the heck it even was now. And he's having this internal reassurance, saying it's kind of like I think I can. Only he's just saying he's just a man. He's just a man. He's just a man. It obviously the Joker is just a human being, but that book has you sort of convinced, and is sort of convincing Batman that you have that he's like a god or something.
Yeah, I completely forgotten about that part. Yeah.
Yeah, the first image you have of the Joker in Death of the Family, I think that'll stick with me forever. It's almost terrifying. Just the way he was drawn in Death of the Family. Oh, it's such a good book. It's certainly right up there for me. But I think my favorite Joker moment is in The Killing Joke. I don't know if you guys have read it.
I've bought that and have not read it yet, so do not spoil it. Or here, I will recuse myself for 30 seconds.
All right, so you gone? Okay, well, spoilers for anyone who hasn't read it. Spoiler alert. Basically, just the Joker's monologue when Gordon is inside the funhouse. I don't know if you've heard of it. Troy Baker did his version of that, and it was sort of killing. Yeah. He did it at a Comic-Con. That monologue, it really sort of defines the Joker's personality and why he is the way he is. That's just certainly my favorite Joker moment. It's really an insight straight into his head and why he does the things that he does. I don't know. It's just my favorite way the Joker's ever been written. It's certainly one of my favorite Batman stories. A lot of people give it hate, but a lot of people love it at the same time. I don't know. I personally love it, but that monologue. It's just perfection. I don't know. See, Marvel, it doesn't have that with its villains. You got Loki, sure, I mean, he's not terrifying. He does have his brains about him. He's witty, but I don't know. There's no Marvel villains for me. You got the Green Goblin or someone like that who's going to terrify you. DC's villains, I'm going to say they're a bit more realistic in a way. If that world were to exist, I think that would be the more realistic way that villains would be.
Yeah.
Whereas, Marvel villains, they might take a bit of a comedic approach or something like that. I do much prefer Marvel. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero, without a doubt. I'm a huge Spider-Man nut. I don't know, that's the comparison with me. The villains in DC just make DC.
Yeah, no, I would probably agree. I've got far more of a DC knowledge when it comes to reading the books rather than Marvel stuff. But I suppose what sort of struck me with some of the Marvel movies, and I won't go into too much, but recently there just doesn't seem to have been much of a threat. There's not been much on the line. You know that the major characters aren't gonna, this isn't gonna happen to them because they're going to be in the next movie, or this villain is just we need someone to be in here who can wear a cloak. Okay, put them in it, and then just see what happens. And I don't know. I remember watching Avengers: The Age of Ultron, and I just came away going, I really wanted a bit more from that. I was honestly disappointed by it, mainly because I love the first one so much, and probably because you didn't have that villain. Loki was such a charismatic villain, and as you say, after that, who do you then put into that? Whereas I've never kind of gotten the sense from that from some of the sort of DC stuff, maybe. I don't know whether you guys felt that way, like whether the Marvel movies are quite as good as they were or anything like that.
No, I certainly feel the same way. I feel the Marvel movies have sort of fallen off their horse a little bit. But in saying that, I find it funny how DC and Marvel stack up one way when you compare them in comics, but in their cinematic universe, it's completely different. Marvel has DC absolutely crushed, which I find amazing. I think there's so much more material you could draw from for a movie with DC over Marvel. Yet Marvel just has it absolutely nailed somehow. I don't know what you guys think of, with Marvel versus DC in the cinematic universe, but that's sort of my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'm with you there. I think it's weird if you try to stack up these Marvel movies versus DC movies, because I think DC has the best comic book movie, but the next of the top 10, or maybe the 8 of the next top 10 are all Marvel movies. I don't know. I think we are going to hit a point where we are all so done with comic book movies in the next 2 years. And then they're going to continue coming out, and we're all just going to be like, ugh, for 3 years after that.
I agree, yeah. But is there any sort of genre you could compare that to? Has that ever happened with any sort of movie before, where you get such an oversaturation of something, and then...
So, I wasn't around at the time, so it's hard for me to say whether or not that people became frustrated with them, or if tastes just changed and people started making other stuff. But I mean, there are certainly movie genres that you can look at to identify with a certain era. At least in the United States, I don't know how much of this made it overseas, but like spaghetti westerns, like Wild West movies were definitely like more of like a 60s, 50s, whatever, I don't know exactly, don't kill me old people kind of thing.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And then you kind of had very much like a certain style of sci-fi movies. It was kind of like everybody saw the original Star Trek and were like, oh my god, let's try to do something great in space, and ended up just being kind of, you had your hits and your misses, and that was kind of more through the 70s and 80s. And I'm not really sure if there was one of that for the 90s. But you can even look in games, like, I think the most famous example of it in recent years would be music rhythm games from 2005 to 2009. Just getting, way too many of them, especially through 2007, 2008, 2009, and then 2010, them just, kind of bottoming out. World War II shooters, I think that's another thing that happened there for about 7 years, from the turn of the century through the late aughts. We had way too many goddamn World War II first-person shooters. And when was the last time we saw a realistic World War II shooter? I think it was 2009 or 2010. I'm not really sure if this was as much of we had too much of it kind of thing, but there was, genres in music that come and die really quickly. Give me, a rap rock album that wasn't from, the late 80s, early 90s, or I guess through the 90s in general. Nobody's really doing that anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't know how many of you guys know, but I teach media and film studies to 16 to 18-year-olds. So one of the questions that I got them thinking about recently was, is the superhero movie bubble about to burst? And because there was an article I found, and I just want them to do some discussion work for a bit. And I asked, how many people in here know that Ant-Man's coming out in 3 weeks? And 3 people knew. And I said, okay, how many people knew that Age of Ultron was coming out? And nearly everyone put their hand up, So, you start looking at something like Ant-Man, and as much as it looks kind of interesting, you then go, well, but is that the first sign that maybe this is on the verge of collapsing, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I want to enjoy these movies more, but even myself, I'm getting a bit sort of fatigued of the formula of it every single time.
But, and not only that, it's not even just that there are so many, or that it's the same formula or whatever. It's just you look and they have their release schedules set out to 2020. You know, like it's starting to feel, and those are publicly available release schedules. That's not like I'm sitting here in my house saying they know all this stuff, blah, 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 blah. Like, no, like that's like those are real things that they've announced and whatnot. Like, it feels so manufactured, and obviously, like, every movie made by any of these big studios is commercial. But the trick to making your audience love it and feel like you give a shit about them is tricking them into thinking that they made it because they love it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the sort of realistic context I give to my students is, okay, so that movie there that's been predicted there, right at the end of their line, you'll be done with university by the time that comes out. And they then go, yeah, actually, am I going to be interested in that same thing again once I've done all of that? And suddenly when you start putting sort of real-life milestones into it, you then go, yeah, is that really going to hold my attention for that long? You know, how long can you actually maintain hype for something and excitement for something when you know it's still a long way off? I think it's quite difficult to do that.
That's exactly right. I think Marvel's bitten off, and DC now, with both their release schedules, have bitten off a bit more than they can chew. And I think most people would argue that last year Guardians of the Galaxy was one of the biggest movies and possibly the best Marvel movie. A lot of people are going to argue that point, and I think the reason for that is it was a breath of fresh air into the genre. It sort of stood out on its own. It's not really a superhero movie. And I think if Marvel were to try to do more of that, it could work. They could carry out probably most of the way to their release schedule, but I don't know. I think everyone's just going to be so bored of seeing Iron Man fly around and then, you know, Captain America, you know, say one of his stupid patriotic lines again. I don't know. There's only so much of Marvel everyone could take. As much as I love it, I don't see myself watching it right through to the end.
Yeah, I agree completely.
I'm curious, what is the view of Captain America in places that aren't America?
It's a good question.
Like, is it like a roll your eyes at the Americans kind of thing, or is it just like unfathomably stupid, or is it kind of cool? Like,
I think it's subjective to the person. I mean, to me, it's not roll your eyes at the Americans. It's roll your eyes at him as a character. That's just me anyway. I just find him too perfect and too nice, sort of too patriotic, too much of the good guy. But I don't see him so much as America waving the stars and stripes in your face.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think it is completely subjective. I think considering how they could have done him, a bit like Thor, you know, that they could have really sort of made it the cheesiest thing ever. And, you know, I was thinking that how, for a non-American viewer, how am I going to enjoy this? And actually, I think I prefer First Avenger, which not everyone does, but I prefer that one. And they actually, I thought, quite cleverly acknowledged that some of the history of this character maybe doesn't sit so comfortably, maybe it's a bit cheesy and all that sort of stuff, but so I actually really like that they acknowledged that right at the start, and it doesn't bother me at all, whereas I thought it probably would before I saw the first Avenger, but no, it doesn't bother me either way, really, to be honest.
Yeah, I've got this poster in my room. It's 70 years of Marvel Comics, and it's just like the covers of lots of comic books, you know, obviously throughout those 70 years. And there's this one of Captain America. It's like Captain America, the Commie Smasher, or something like that. It's like, watch out for the Red Threat and all this stupid, like, anti-communist propaganda of the character back then.
It was initially feeding off World War II and, you know, the hype, for lack of a better term, around that, and then became this, like, Red Scare anti-communist Cold War kind of thing. Like, it was really, really, really weird. Yeah, because I just kind of look at Captain America as actually one of, like, not like his actual character, but just his existence is actually like just like an interesting historical relic, because a character like that wouldn't be made now. You know what I mean? Like, if you made a Captain America now, it would just be kind of like, you would face way too much. I mean, first of all, so much of America's recent history in terms of, like, United States fighting stuff is so shameful, and you know, you'd face way too much, like, public resistance from that. But back then, you could make a character, you know, Captain America, and just have him punch Hitler or do whatever the hell he did back then.
Yeah, and I love how they played off that in that original movie, actually, how they made his character, you know, a propaganda device in the actual movie, like that was the device he actually served as a character to the real world, which, I don't know, I thought that was pretty awesome.
Yeah, no, totally.
But someone brought up the point earlier about music, how its genres sort of got repetitive and stuff like that, and it had its sort of defining eras, you know, so you'd have the 80s, you have your Michael Jackson and pop music and stuff, and then get to the sort of later 80s and 90s and
pop,
stuff.
Though, I think, in the 80s.
Yeah, that's right. And then you sort of get to sort of the 90s and whatnot, and you're getting onto sort of punk rock.
Grunge.
And grunge and whatnot, and then obviously now it's sort of majoritively electronic, and then you still have, you know, lots of hints of older stuff because everyone still digs the old stuff. But my point is, music is something we have in our everyday lives, but it's also something people don't notice a lot in our mediums. For example, in a movie, when someone's in a car chase, they'll have a sort of high-paced song, or in a dramatic moment, you know, a sad scene in a movie, there'll be, you know, sad piano and violins going on in the background and whatnot. But yeah, basically the topic is, how much does music serve our mediums, do you think? Do we take it for granted? Is it a big thing? Could we do without it? Or, you know, what might some of your favourite soundtracks be, and what purpose have they served in the games you're playing, or the movies you're watching, all that sort of stuff?
I can get us started here. I think, I mean, obviously, I think, to me, the golden ratio for music in a movie is there will be 1 or 2 times in a movie where I will notice the music. And that doesn't mean that the music doesn't matter the rest of the time. That just means that, you know, like, it's the music as a background thing in other media other than just music should guide you emotionally, and, like, in terms of excitement, like, it should be a guiding force and an enforcer of whatever the scene is giving you. So I think most of the time you shouldn't notice the music, or at least that's how I most enjoy it. Like, when I think about, like, wow, the music in that thing was awesome, it's not until I reflect on it later on. Yeah, I mean, I think there's, like, 1 or 2 times in a movie where it should really stand out to me, and it's typically if there's some sort of, like, breathtaking scene, or, like, you come up in a video game and there's, like, some sort of vista that you're overlooking, and, you know, all the, I don't really know exactly what you would say here, but just, like, all the bunch of different instruments now chime in, and, you know, it's a great grand moment. I think there are a few exceptions to that. I think there are games like Flower and Journey that I was constantly aware of the music, but it was still, like, really drawing me in. I think especially with Flower, just because of, you know, how you interact with the game changing the music. But yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I mean, when we were sort of thinking about, you know, what we were going to sort of talk about today, it's funny you say that, coming up on, like, the veranda and things like that, and the moment that came to my mind was, you guys played Red Dead Redemption?
Yes.
Oh, yes. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, I'll just say one word: Mexico.
Yeah.
And just that, I mean, this is just this stunning moment, and just, you know, all the other sounds just get turned down just that little bit, but that one piece, and it's the first piece of, like, a song as opposed to just a piece of score that comes in. I mean, I'm not really an expert on music at all, but just remember that moment being probably one of the most, I don't know, I'll just say beautiful games moments I think there ever was. Just that moment where you can just explore literally this new piece of land that you've not been to before. Just your character who you've gotten to know on his horse and nothing else, and that was quite amazing. But Yeah, I think I'm totally with Brad. Generally speaking, if you don't notice the score or the music that's playing on in the background, then it's doing something right. And the one that's been doing that for me has been Bloodborne recently. The music in that is just so huge and operatic, but you are dealing with something huge and grotesque, and you're just kind of hoping that you don't get killed again. So actually, that really fits the tone perfectly. You kind of go, yeah, the music's really good, but I'm just not gonna die now, so I'll just keep going. So yeah, I can totally see sort of both sides of it there, definitely.
Yeah, I think Brad pretty much hit the nail in the coffin. Pretty much, you don't really want to notice the music
hit the nail
right through.
Head.
Same difference really. Hit the nail in the coffin. It's a little more grave, but
Yeah.
But you don't want to be. Say you're watching a movie, you don't want to really be picking it up every 15-20 minutes. Oh, this music's really good. It's essentially meant to be the guide right through. I think the most recent best example I can think of is the recent Fast and the Furious movie, where the music right through that is just absolutely amazing, and then you get to the final scene where they have the Paul Walker tribute, and the final song through it is just an absolute standout.
Oh my god. Wait, that's actually funny. Has that song been like way overplayed?
It's completely overplayed now, yeah.
Okay, yeah, because that movie hit right before like graduation season, like in the United States, both for colleges and for high schools. So like you heard it, like I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that I heard that song 100 times from May 3rd to June 7th.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's quite intense.
And that's not of my own choice. That's all times where somebody else played it in my presence.
There you go. See, I'm going to take a different approach to this whole music thing with you guys. I really like noticing the music. I mean, I see it as a device to set the tone mostly, for sure. So it should mostly go unnoticed, but it'll obviously set the tone. Like in a sad scene, it'll sort of be in the background and whatnot. But then I think to some of my favorite soundtracks, and the music is always noticeable. For example, Legend of Zelda, when you're in Hyrule Field or something like that, like specifically Ocarina of Time has an amazing soundtrack that you're always noticing, and you're always singing along to it. And that's one of my favorite parts about the game. And it makes you always think back to it as well. When you think about Ocarina of Time, the soundtrack always comes up for sure, whether it's any of the songs you're playing on your Ocarina or something like that. And then I think to my favorite movie franchise, Star Wars. Like John Williams,
of course, yeah, you're right.
So
yeah,
it's very much in your face. It's not. It is for tone, but it's also for spectacle. I don't know.
Sure. Like the Binary Sunset.
Yeah, exactly like that. Like, for example, Darth Vader in the Imperial March will come up. You'll hear that, and that'll set the tone, but also give you a feeling, it makes you sort of frightened and whatnot. And I remember the first time hearing that when I was little, the Imperial March coming on, I was like, oh, shit, what is this? Like, this is one bad guy. And, yeah, I don't know. And then I think to one of my favorite missions of The Last Generation, which is the last mission of Halo 3, that epic score going on while you're driving that warthog around while everything is exploding around you. If that music wasn't so noticeable, I don't think that mission would it wouldn't be so grand, it wouldn't feel so big, sort of thing. I don't know, the music is huge to me. I love hearing it. So, see, I thought you guys would probably actually say a similar thing. I was kind of surprised that you all agreed it should be like a sort of background device.
Well, having said that, I have got loads of like game and movie soundtracks on my laptop, which I often listen to like when I'm working from home or marking or something like that. I find I listen to it. And I mean, I do have, like I said, I'm not a great music expert, mainly because I have a bit of a sort of tin ear for picking up music. I couldn't tell you what one note was or anything like that. All I can probably say is, yeah, that sounded really nice. That's about as much as I can really go to at the time. But yeah, I'm exactly Ocarina of Time. I've got on my computer. I listen to that quite a bit. So yeah, I tend to appreciate the music more when I listen to it away from the game, which is probably not how it was supposed to be, if that's the right way to put it. But yeah, I suppose I need to be sort of disconnected from the visuals a little bit more just to appreciate it. But having said that, like you say with Star Wars and some of the John Williams and even some of like the Danny Elfman stuff as well, you kind of remember those moments in the movies, or at least I tend to anyway. I tend to play the movie out again in my brain. That's that scene in particular, and to me, that's almost as good as watching the movie again. Not quite the same thing, but it's no. I definitely, I kind of need to step away from it. That just seems to be how my brain is wired. I think more than anything, but I certainly appreciate the music, definitely.
I think that also goes back to something you were saying before, Andy, where like in Bloodborne, it's like you notice the music, but okay, I'm going to go back to trying to not die now. When you're playing the game, the aim is to play the game. You notice the music, but it's not the main feature. Whereas when you go and sort of listen to the music on its own, it becomes the sole thing you're listening to while you're doing something else, and you realize and you pick up more on it and you enjoy it more.
Yeah.
Another way of looking at. Sorry, you go, Brad.
Well, after you brought up, some of the, like you brought up Ocarina of Time, I started thinking most of the older game soundtracks that I kind of operate in a similar way. I'm sorry, most of the game soundtracks that I operate with in a similar way are older games. Like when I think of, like, the music is very much tied to the moment for me, and I can recognize it in something like some of the old Fire Emblem games on GBA, or even really the new ones, or Final Fantasy VI or Chrono Trigger, or this isn't really that old, but what is it called? Sword and Sorcery. It was like a indie game that came out about 5 years ago at this point, or 4 years ago. But yeah, that was another one with a beautiful, beautiful soundtrack that when you hear each song, if you've played that game enough, you totally go back and you can like see what's going on in front of you at the time,
Another way of looking at, what sort of music does to you while you're playing a game is, Taryn, in the chat, we were talking about before how whenever you're playing multiplayer games, whether you're playing Counter-Strike or whatever, you like to listen to the Final Fantasy soundtrack. Is that something? Sorry, is that something that you guys, like, any of you will commonly do? Have music on in the background to multiplayer stuff?
Of course, it's like the music set in the multiplayer sort of games, things like Counter-Strike, League of Legends, Dota 2, all that sort of stuff, they have the same music over and over again. Hence, you listen to, you find games that you've played before. Like, Final Fantasy VII for me is probably one of my main ones. I have that playing on replay about 7 times a day. And just listen to that whilst I do other things,
But do you think it sort of changes the way you play? I mean, for me personally, if I have something a little bit more chilled, I know, sort of on the more sort of classical side, and I'm playing, I don't know, for example, Halo or Call of Duty, I just can't do it. Like, I can't sit out there going, running and gunning people down while I've got Beethoven going on in the background. It's just not a match, So I'd have to have, something a lot heavier.
Yeah. Having said that, did you never play the operatic channel when playing GTA 3? Which is always hilarious. You're mowing people down, and you just got classic pieces of opera playing at the same time, and it was just this, this wonderful, basically what you were describing just now, carnage, but class at the same time.
Carnage, but class.
Yeah. So I sort of found that, at least anyway. I don't tend to play too many sort of online multiplayer games. I don't know. They just don't grab me very much. But what we tend to do, so my wife and I, is that we'll have, so she's really gotten into Minecraft, which she's not really a gamer or anything like that, but we use the Spotify app on the PS4. And so we'll just stream our music playing through that. And actually, that changes it significantly, because the music in Minecraft, I don't know about you guys, but it can be really depressing. And this is quite this sort of joyful creation-based game, and then you just got this, God, I'm on my way to a funeral almost sort of sounding music, and then you just put on what you want, and it's amazing how different that makes that game seem. You can turn it into whatever you want it to be, which is kind of what Minecraft's about, at least anyway. So so that's kind of one of my more recent examples of stuff. I just don't tend to play too many online multiplayer games, just me, I'm afraid.
I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm playing games, unless I really have to be like listening to dialogue. so that's kind of, I don't do music as much while I'm playing video games, but yeah, that's kind of my background thing, and it kind of, I don't know, it kind of dissociates what I'm doing sometimes in games. Like Call of Duty at this point isn't as much, like I realize it is about killing people, but when I'm playing the multiplayer version, it's less of like I'm killing people and more of like a point at the dot that's shaped like a man and shoot. Point at the dot and that's shaped like a man and shoot, and avoid having the other dots see you and shoot you. You know, like that's kind of how I operate. But it's interesting that you bring up Minecraft, because that's one thing that I don't understand exactly how it decides to do this, but I think it's a totally underrated part of that game. Everybody always talks about this like creativity and this and that and mod support and this crazy thing you can do in Minecraft, and you can make it whatever you want. To me, the coolest, or one of the coolest, maybe not the coolest, things about Minecraft is how the soundtrack just seems to crescendo and just come into the forefront of the game at the most random, or not most random, but the most appropriate times, but you have no idea how the game is deciding what those appropriate times are.
Yeah, that's actually really true. I mean, obviously, if I'm playing Spotify, I'm not hearing that. But yeah, actually, when I've played it in the past, you're right. I don't know how they do that, but it does manage to find those particular moments, like when you come across a particular cave or a particular enemy or something new for the first time. Yeah, no, that's really true, actually. Yeah, I don't notice that.
Huh. Music.
I mean, I've never played a whole lot of Minecraft, except when I did also notice that. I mean, I'm not going to say I really liked the music itself, but I liked what it did. I don't know, really. You're right, it did sort of crescendo at the weirdest moments, but it was always the right moments, and it was always so out of nowhere, like when you least expect it. It was great. I like that about Minecraft, although Minecraft isn't really a game I've ever seen myself getting into a whole lot. But I would like to know, though, guys, like some of your favorite soundtracks, whether it's from a movie, whether it's from a game, or anything else. Yeah, what are your favorite soundtracks, guys?
I don't know. I mean, the one I always go back to is Fire Emblem. I love that, and it's just like kind of, at this point, I don't think it's like that it's the best music in the world. Like, it is great music in the Fire Emblem series, but just so much of it is tied to specific memories I have as a kid. Chrono Trigger is stunning. Yeah, what do you guys think?
Yeah. I mean, I've got quite a few that I listen to quite regularly. My main one at the moment is Bastion. Have you played Bastion?
Parts.
The soundtrack for that game is absolutely flawless.
Huh.
It's just, yeah, it's purely amazing. But another one that I actually need to get my hands on because it's really good is the Persona 4 Golden.
Yes, oh my god, yes. I can't believe I didn't think of that myself.
I have no idea where to get it or how to get it, but I want to get that soundtrack.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's about... and then, of course, you've got the Final Fantasy games, which have... Even if the game's terrible, the soundtrack is almost always near perfection. Yeah, what about you? What about you, Andy?
One that I listen to loads is the Skyrim soundtrack. I listen to that quite a lot, mainly because it's 3 hours, and that's how long it takes me to get all my marking and my planning done. But I almost... that covers so many different emotions, and again, I probably put at least 150 hours into playing Skyrim when that came out, yeah, it just covers so many different emotions and so many different kinds of music, and that really sticks out for me. And probably Red Dead is probably the other one, and I come back to Red Dead again. I've listened to that so many times, and again, I think I just like the fact that it starts to become a soundtrack towards the end. So, rather than having just score, it then has songs at the end of it as well, which, I won't say what the ending of Red Dead just in case you haven't finished it, but the ending of that game has so many memories, and again, just the last few tracks in that absolutely sum up all the different range of emotions that I felt right at the very end of that game. And so so probably those two are probably the ones that I've listened to the most, I would imagine. What about you, Sam?
I mean, to me, it's probably the obvious answer if you've been listening to me a lot throughout the last few episodes of this podcast, but the Star Wars soundtrack, without a doubt. It's just something I can't get sick of. It fits, the tone of... Like, the soundtrack always fits the tone of what they're trying to do in the movie, but not only with movies, whether it's in a game or any other sort of medium that the soundtrack could be in for Star Wars. I don't know, it just suits everything so perfectly, so wonderfully arranged and stuff. It's something I never find myself getting sick of. But if we're talking about games, I always find myself going back to the Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask soundtracks. I've never actually finished Majora's Mask or gotten, very far through it at all. But I have the soundtrack on my iPod, and I go through them all the time. They're both very unique, especially from one another. I mean, for example, with Majora's Mask, there's this one song called Clocktown. It's sort of the main song in the whole soundtrack. It's really, happy, very typical, childish, good tune, very uplifting. And then there's another song that does a version of it that's like, it's very frightening and twisted. It like sort of sounds like you're going through hell. I don't know. They're like how they managed to twist such a happy, good tune into something like that. I always find amazing. I find myself listening to those two soundtracks on car trips all the time. All the time. They're both very memorable to me, even though they have pretty much no attachment to Majora's Mask as a game. I love that soundtrack.
You see, I don't really listen to soundtracks separately from their original product that often, but I think the one that I'm most likely to is actually just some Mega Man soundtracks. Just like
fantastic.
Really just the first 3 and really the first 6, I guess you could say, like all just the 8-bit ones pretty much. So that also includes 9 and 10. Were 4 through 6 8-bit? I think so. I don't remember. I didn't play them. But yeah, I think the music in that series is awesome.
I love most 8-bit stuff. I mean, I came across this YouTube channel the other day called 8-Bit Universe, and they just do 8-bit renditions of any song you can ever imagine, and they're just so awesome. Like, everything sounds better in 8-bit. I don't know.
I want to hear some 8-bit Man Overboard by Blink-182.
Some 8-bit Man Overboard. Yeah, like, we found an 8-bit rendition of Men at Work, Land Down Under, the other day. That was fantastic. That was just too good. But no, a lot of people, when they talk about game soundtracks, so talking about 8-bit has just reminded me of the Mario soundtrack. That's something we've had so many different versions of, but it's always so good. I've always enjoyed that whenever I've heard it.
Yeah. I mean, they're still using the same tracks, aren't they, from the original Super Mario Brothers? They're still reinterpreting them even on the sort of the Wii U games and stuff like that. It's kind of amazing how they keep reinterpreting like those same notes again and again, and they just using different instruments to do those same tracks, and amazing how much grander it sounds. It's kind of astounding some 30 years later that they're able to do that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I even think to Super Mario 64, like with the underwater levels, as much as everyone hated them, I always enjoyed the music to those. It was so calming. I don't know. It's really good. I love that game an immense amount.
See, I'm glad you said that, because I didn't have an NES or a Super Nintendo when I was growing up. So my first Nintendo console was the N64, and one of the first games was Mario 64. So, but many people consider that's not a typical Mario game for all the sort of conventions and things like that, for all the sort of 2D side-scrolling Mario games. But Mario 64 is the one that I keep coming back to, because that's the one that I grew up with, and I'm totally with you that I've got the Mario 64 soundtrack on my computer as well. Again, it's just got so many strong memories, and that underwater music, yeah, it is really quite it's quite beautiful and quite nostalgic. And you then think it's coming out of the N64 console. How is that possible to produce that, quite beautiful piece of music?
Yeah, there's some amazing audio engineering there. But I don't know. Yeah, Mario 64 was the first video game I ever played. Well, at least that I remember myself playing. And yeah, that soundtrack, I think it'll always stick with me. It's not one that I ever listened to intentionally, but it's one that I could always just sort of sum up in my head. It's like, it'll always be with me. I'll always remember it, sort of thing. It's very memorable. I don't know whether it's because it's my first game, but, I don't think it's something I'll ever forget. But I think it's probably time to move on now to closing it up nearly. So we'll move on to our trivia portion of the podcast. So basically, we're going back to sort of Batman topic with that game just coming out today and all, or depending on where you are in the world. But the Joker's past, before he became the Clown Prince of Crime, is often mixed and changed by both the character and the authors throughout his time on pages and screens. The graphic novel The Killing Joke suggests one possible past for in which the Joker did which of these for a job, sorry. So your options are A, a clown, B, a mobster, C, a mechanic, and D, a comedian. So I think Andy's going to know this one.
Yeah, I'm good with this one, but...
So you have not read this one yet, so...
It's not so much of a spoiler, it's in the first couple of pages, really.
Yeah, I didn't figure it would be a huge part of the plot, it doesn't sound like it. Can you repeat the options?
So a clown, a mobster, a mechanic, and a comedian.
Mobster seems too obvious. So does a comedian. I'm going to say a mechanic.
A mechanic, yep. And Taran?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go mechanic as well, simply because I have absolutely no idea, and the others seem too obvious based on the name.
Well, Andy, do you want to tell him which one it is?
Comedian.
Damn it!
It certainly is. Yeah, you'll find the Joker was a failed comedian before he became the Joker.
Jesus.
There you go. Thus ends my streak.
I'll get one of these one day.
To be fair to you, one of the things...
Taran yet to get one.
To be fair, though, he does say in The Killing Joke, doesn't he? He does say, oh, sometimes I remember it one way, sometimes I remember it another, so...
Yeah, that's exactly right.
You could be diplomatic and say, well, maybe you could have been a mechanic in some form or other. But...
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Maybe.
That's why I've said it's always mixed by both the character and the authors.
Reincarnated as a mechanic.
Yeah. I mean, well, in Death of the Family, he's wearing a mechanic's outfit, isn't he? He's wearing, sort of the overalls.
His name's Joe. Yeah.
But yeah, so that wraps it up for the trivia portion of our podcast, guys. So, like I said before, we're a weekly podcast. You'll find us talking about all sorts of different topics. I know we've sort of stuck to games a lot recently, but who knows where we'll go later. There's nowhere we won't really venture into. But so where can we find you all, guys? Where can we find you, Andy? Do you have a Twitter or a gamer tag or anything you'd like to pimp?
On PSN, I'm Lebowski AMC. Just a bit of a hint as to one of my favourite movies. So that's on there. Same thing on just a really sort of subtle brick in the face kind of hint. And on Twitter, I am Andy Barney's Bus, which is a very strange name. It's a very long story, which I won't get into here. But so I'm on both of those.
Yep, awesome. What about you, Brad?
Find me on Twitter at Brad Eric Murphy. Exactly how you think it is. MURPHY. Add me on PSN, Bradley Murphy, BRADLEY MURPHY. And don't Facebook me, because that's creepy.
Okay, you, Taran.
Well, I've got Twitter at Taran Owens 108. I have Steam at Overpowered Cake. Don't ask. And that's about it at the moment.
Yep, awesome. Well, you can find me at Samuel Nick on both PSN and Twitter. I really don't use Twitter at all, so it'd be kind of worthless follow, but happy for people to hit me up on PSN. Yeah, that's been this week's episode, guys. Thanks for listening.
Do you have a SoundCloud?
Sorry?
Do you have a SoundCloud?
I do. That's also inactive, though.
Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry.
Well, anyway, that'll do that. Au revoir.
Good job.
Peace.
Goodbye.
Good job.
Yeah, sorry about that at the end. I just figured you hadn't really drawn as much attention to that kind of stuff that you were into, and I was like, hey, everybody should check out this. But yeah.
Yeah, it's not very active at the moment. I sort of do a bit more ghost producing than anything these days.
What is ghost producing?
It's where you make stuff for other people, let them put their name on it, and get paid for it.
Oh.
So yeah, they give you money
Fair
to do
enough.
that. Yeah.
That's right.
If only people could do that with tests.
Yeah, that's right.
That would be amazing. Make life a hell of a lot easier.
I would be I would have a lot more money than I do right now.
Yeah.
I would have a little less money than I do right now.
But no, the advantage to that is you don't gain a following, so that way people aren't expecting you to be releasing stuff often, and that you can sort of just do it when you want to, or when someone approaches you. I know you don't really feel like you're pushed into making any music and stuff like that, so yeah, I kind of prefer that.
Well then, I mean, I'm sure for somebody who it's not like this is what they do from when they wake up to when they go to bed, it's probably the advantageous way to go.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it's not something I like doing 24/7. Sort of just more of a hobby. But yeah. Well, good episode, guys. I think it'll still take quite a few more for everyone to mesh together, but we're not doing badly at all.
And it'll always be a little bit difficult. Like right there, 3 people just try to talk at the same time. Like when you can't see each other, like live, like it's going to be hard to work around some of that stuff. But we'll just have to get used to it.
Yeah, I think the first one we did was by far the best for that. Like we seem to very rarely speak over anyone that first episode. But yeah,
best episode we've done, I think.
Yeah, by just the quality of it.
Yeah, I literally woke up, checked my phone, saw that this was happening, and moved my computer to a better place in the house for like Wi-Fi. Like I'm literally still like, I've not had any coffee. I'm barely wearing any clothes. I'm wearing like underwear that I went to bed in. Just like sitting on the ground in the middle of my house.
Nice.
I've been up for 20 hours and 9 minutes.
Wow. Well, I was going to say, how many of these I can be a part of, I don't know, because of just the time differences. The rest of you are closer in time, I suspect. Are you than me? Maybe, I don't know.
What time zone are you in?
I'm in the UK.
Okay.
So it's at 5:10 in the afternoon here.
Yeah, it's a bit more difficult to get somebody in from the UK because I remember back in the day we were trying to work around having an East Coast American and a New Zealander and an Aussie, and it was pretty easy to get the latter 3 involved, but to get somebody from the UK, it was a bit more difficult.
Yeah, the good old public gamer broadcast days.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, the time difference is something we seem to be working around it not terribly at the moment, though. So, we'll see how we go.
I still want to have everyone on, at least once within the next couple of weeks, sort of thing. Like, even if that means I don't have to be on, I'm definitely happy to not be on some weeks.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump off whenever. Sit out for 3 weeks if I have to. I don't care. But yeah, get everyone on as much as we can.
Yep.
Us 3 have. Sorry.
Me, Brad, the 3 of us have been on it, all of them, haven't we?
Wait a minute, you guys didn't do one. I thought you guys did one while I was gone the past few days.
No, we tried to. We couldn't get anyone.
Oh, shit.
So.
Yeah. No, you've been on everyone.
Yep.
Huh. Well done.
But yeah.
It's been nice nice being in the rotating chair for an episode at least, anyway.
Yeah, no worries. We'll certainly get you on a lot more.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I've never done anything like this whatsoever. So I'm sorry if I was sort of talking over people or, just sort of. I've noticed I was just kind of going, yes, and just sort of doing lots of that throughout it. I'm so sorry. So.
No, you were great.
You did,
especially for the first time.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Thank you. Well, I mean, obviously, with me being out to work and everything, it's not going to be easy, and time zones, but certainly, I think I said, like, in a couple of weeks, be probably broken up for summer. I'm in the process of trying to move 200 miles away, which in UK terms, that's a long way.
Is that like 200 what away?
200 miles away. So it's about 4 hours drive. So I'm kind of in the middle of the country at the moment, sort of around Birmingham sort of way. But I'm now going down towards the south coast. So sort of towards Brighton, if you know any of those sorts of locations on the UK. So kind of down that part on the south coast. But basically, I'm changing jobs. So in September, I'm moving to a head of department role, so head of media studies, which would be pretty awesome.
Nice.
But thank you.
This is a really stupid moment. I totally thought the UK used kilometers and not miles.
No, we have.
No,
not at all. Not at all. I actually
thought that as well.
Yeah, it's. I don't know what I thought, to be honest. But I'm actually in New York over the weekend. Actually, we're doing a trip.
Oh.
So I'm kind of looking forward to that, which is really